What sort of changes do you think that Sean Payton can bring to the Denver Broncos this upcoming season based on how the Broncos played last season?
Well, I feel like anything is an upgrade from Nathaniel Hackett. It's not an insult to Nathaniel. It's not to say that he's not a competent offensive mind. It wasn't working off the rip. Now, whether or not that's Russell making bad decisions, whether that's play calling, time management, front office decisions, it makes no difference. The first year was an absolute flop. The front office was laughable in terms of the decisions that they made, and they almost look comical in terms of you know how much they gave up to get Russell, right? So I'm going to piggyback off of that and say Sean can make a big difference. The mind, the experience, the pedigree, veteran head coach, played with Coach Drew Brees and a number of other Hall of Fame caliber players, won a Super Bowl. Again, this is a different kind of pedigree than a first-time head coach. So I think that, yes, even if they win one more game, which I don't see happening in terms of just being one, I think they can win a significant amount more. If this fails, if Sean Payton cannot turn this around, there are two narratives that are going to come away from this team. One, Denver's front office needs to be completely reevaluated because they gave up 4 first-round picks for Russell and Sean Payton combined. I believe 3 or 4 second-round picks for Sean Payton and Russell Wilson combined. So they are the definition of all in, and if they fail, there needs to be repercussions. You need to reset that entire front office. I'm not saying ownership, even though they've already sold the team or ownership is up for sale, whatever the whole situation is in Denver. We need to sincerely look at that front office and say, we just made 2 horrible decisions in back-to-back years and got rid of most of our future for the next 3 to 4 seasons. On what earth does this make sense for you to give up everything for a guy that hasn't coached in 3 years, 2 years, whatever the case may be? Again, I'm not saying that he's a bad coach, but there are a lot of things going on in Denver, and to assume that one person can fix it all in the AFC West, to me, is a little foolish. I know that you need to rebound off of last year. I know that you need to remedy what the injuries, or not the injuries, the mistakes that you made, but to give up more of your future for another gambled season with Russell Wilson, which leads me to my second point. If this flops, Russell Wilson's career is going to get a drastic narrative change from one of the best quarterbacks of all time in the era he played in Seattle to, was that all Pete Carroll and that Seattle system? Or was that Russell Wilson just coming off of the cliff? Like, as he got older, did he just completely drop off? Because we saw signs in the last 2 to 3 games of the year where Russell played a lot better. Now, that could have been because of the coaching change with Nathaniel Hackett getting let go and whatever. The point is, there are a lot of spinning headlines right now revolving around Denver, and most of them are horrible. If Sean Payton falls on his face and Russell Wilson does not perform to the way that he's supposed to, that that whole executive board, everybody that makes critical decisions, even the janitors that clean the sweet boxes, everybody's got to go. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You trade damn near your next 4 or 5 years worth of picks for a coach and a quarterback that played horrendous last season. Heaven forbid it happens again. Heads will roll.
Kevin, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know if they're going to be able to. Because let's look at the landscape when it comes to the AFC West. Because check this out. Sean Payton is going into a division where you have to contend with the Kansas City Chiefs, the Los Angeles Chargers, and the Las Vegas Raiders. And all 3 of these teams, I think, can compete at a high level. Granted, the Raiders, they definitely, I think, fell below expectations with their play last year, but I still believe that there's some potential with that team as a whole. But let's look at the Chiefs. The Chiefs are going to another Super Bowl. They've gone to 3 Super Bowls in the last 4 years. Patrick Mahomes is on this historic pace to start off his career, and he's being led by one of the best coaches in NFL history in Andy Reid. Okay, that's team 1. You got the Chargers. The Chargers made it to the playoffs this year. Granted, they had that epic collapse against the Jacksonville Jaguars in the wild card round, but you got to go up against Justin Herbert, who is no scrub at the quarterback position. And if they recover from their injuries like they sustained this year, the amount of injuries that the Chargers had this year was just utterly ridiculous. And they still made the playoffs. If they come back healthy next year, and they stay healthy, relatively speaking, for most of, if not the entire year next year, they're going to be a tough out. And then when it comes to the Raiders, I think the Raiders are going to make a legitimate push to try to trade for Aaron Rodgers this offseason so that they can link up Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams going into next year. I think they're going to make a legitimate push. Since they're moving on from Derek Carr, I think they're going to try to go all in on Aaron Rodgers. And if that is the case, we could just throw that as a hypothetical. You're talking about 3 competent quarterbacks to contend with in that division alone. And you've got Russell Wilson, who, by all accounts last year, just played poorly. And that's kind of putting it mildly. There were just some games where he was just flat out awful. It got to a point where members of the offensive personnel were visibly frustrated with the lack of production that Russell was displaying game in and game out. And this is all the things that Sean has to contend with going into next year. And that's just externally. Internally with the team, they have to improve their offensive line. They gave up over 60 sacks as a team last year. I believe Russell Wilson got sacked 55 times last year. And that's on the offensive side of the ball. So Sean at least has some experience in building up an offense because he does have the cachet and the experience with what he was able to do with Drew Brees when he was in New Orleans. But I'll be flat out honest. I think the level of competition that Sean's going to have to deal with in the AFC West compared to what he had to deal with when he was a member of the Saints, when they had to compete against teams like the Bucs, the Panthers, and the Falcons, this is a night and day difference. I don't think the NFC South could really contend with the powerhouses that we have in the AFC West currently. And look, I want Sean Payton to succeed in that role as the head coach for the Broncos, because if you have all 4 of those teams who are competitive in their own division, you're going to have some really good football in that division going into next year and then maybe years after. But if he falls short, Kev, there's going to be some major wholesale changes, not only on the team itself, but the front office. There's going to be some wide-ranging changes if this doesn't work out in the long run. So I think that they found a really good guy to work with in Sean Payton. Sean Payton has Super Bowl pedigree. And I think bringing that type of pedigree into a situation with the Broncos, who desperately need it at this point, I think they made the right decision. And now it's on Sean to find the right personnel on the coaching staff. And then hopefully he's able to instill some confidence in the players. And if he could do that effectively, Denver could go places next year, because when you look at this roster on paper, this could potentially be a pretty solid contender in the AFC. They didn't play like it last year. They fell incredibly short. But if they play up to their potential, this is a team to watch out for. But time will tell, and we're going to see what happens. So we're in February right now. I think OTAs are in a couple months. We got the draft in April. And then we got training camp in July, at the end of July, and then going into August. So he's going to have his work cut out for him. And we'll just kind of see where it goes from here. But that's all I have to say about Sean Payton.